When the cameras stopped rolling, Dr. Phil did something that left the entire studio in complete silence. The white envelope in his hand wasn't just a prop, it was proof. Proof that would unravel a carefully constructed lie told by a man who had convinced not just his family, but an entire community that he was something he wasn't. And in that moment, with the studio lights still burning and the audience holding their breath, everyone realized they were about to witness something unforgettable. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back 3 weeks, back to when a desperate email landed on Dr. Phil's desk from a woman named Sarah, whose world was about to collapse because of one man's deception. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah had discovered something that shattered her entire reality. Her husband of 12 years, Marcus, the man who drove a Tesla, wore Rolex watches, and claimed to run a successful tech consulting firm, wasn't who he said he was. The luxury lifestyle, the business trips, the expensive dinners, all of it was smoke and mirrors. And now, with $340,000 in debt, collectors knocking at their door, and their 2 children asking why they might lose their home, Sarah needed answers. Marcus had agreed to appear on the show. In fact, he seemed almost eager. He walked onto that stage with the confidence of a man who believed his own lies, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He shook Dr. Phil's hand with a firm grip, smiled at the audience, and settled into the chair like he owned the place. But Dr. Phil had done his homework, and Marcus had no idea what was coming. The interview started normally enough. Dr. Phil asked about the business, about the income, about the lifestyle. Marcus answered smoothly, rattling off impressive numbers and dropping names of tech companies he claimed to consult for. He spoke with the practiced ease of someone who told the same story so many times he almost believed it himself. Sarah sat in the audience, her hands trembling in her lap, watching the man she thought she knew perform for the cameras. "So Marcus," Dr. Phil said, leaning forward slightly, "you're telling me your consulting firm brings in roughly $500,000 annually. That's correct." Marcus replied without hesitation. "Some years more, depending on the contracts. And you travel frequently for these high-level consultations. All the time. Silicon Valley, New York, sometimes internationally. That's just the nature of the business." The audience nodded along. It sounded impressive. It sounded successful. It sounded exactly like what a thriving entrepreneur would say. Dr. Phil paused. It was a brief pause, barely noticeable, but something in his expression shifted. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a white envelope. "Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead." "Marcus, I want to show you something," Dr. Phil said quietly. His tone had changed. The casual interviewer demeanor was gone, replaced by something harder, more direct. "Before you came on this show, my team did extensive research, and I mean extensive." Marcus's smile faltered for just a second. "Of course, I expected that." "Good." Dr. Phil held up the envelope, "because what's in this envelope is going to require you to be very, very honest with me, with your wife, and with everyone in this room." The studio went quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the air conditioning humming. "Now, before I open this," Dr. Phil continued, his voice steady and measured, "I'm going to give you one opportunity, one chance to come clean right now on your own terms before I reveal what my investigators found." Marcus shifted in his seat. For the first time since he'd walked on stage, his confidence cracked. "I don't understand what you—" "Yes, you do." Dr. Phil's interruption was sharp, not loud but firm. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm asking you right here, right now, do you want to tell the truth yourself, or do you want me to do it for you?" The camera slowly zoomed in on Marcus's face. Beads of sweat were forming on his forehead. His jaw clenched. His eyes darted to Sarah in the audience, then back to Dr. Phil. I've been honest about everything," he stammered. Dr. Phil nodded slowly. "All right then. You won't mind if I open this envelope?" He didn't wait for a response. With deliberate slowness, Dr. Phil tore open the envelope and pulled out several sheets of paper. He scanned them briefly, then looked directly at Marcus. "Marcus, according to business registration records, employment verification, and tax documents obtained by my team, you do not own a tech consulting firm. In fact, you haven't owned any business for the past 8 years." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Dr. Phil wasn't finished. "The Tesla you drive? Leased under someone else's name. The Rolex watches? financed with credit cards that are now maxed out. The business trips, hotel stays, paid for with loans you never intended to repay. He held up the papers. This isn't consulting income, Marcus. This is fraud. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. Sarah stood up in the audience, tears streaming down her face. How could you? Her voice broke. Our children, Marcus. Our children. Marcus finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I was gonna fix it. I was gonna make it real. When? Dr. Phil's question cut through the emotion like a scalpel. When were you going to fix it? After you destroyed your family's credit? After you lost the house? After your kids had to change schools because you couldn't afford it anymore? The audience was frozen. Some were crying. Others sat with their hands over their mouths in shock. Dr. Phil stood up from his chair, something he rarely did during tapings. He walked over to Marcus, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the leather cushions. Marcus, look at me. Slowly, Marcus raised his eyes. This stops today, Dr. Phil said, his voice quiet but commanding. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today, you're going to stand up, walk over to your wife, and you're going to tell her everything. Every lie, every debt, every scheme, and then you're going to start the long, difficult process of becoming the man your family deserves. Marcus's face crumpled. The facade he maintained for over a decade shattered in real time. I don't know if I can. You don't have a choice, Dr. Phil replied, because if you don't, you're going to lose everything that actually matters. And unlike the fake life you've been living, you won't be able to buy that back with someone else's money. The cameras kept rolling as Marcus slowly stood up. His expensive suit suddenly looked like a costume. He walked towards Sarah with the unsteady gait of a man who'd just been exposed to his core. When he reached her, he collapsed, not physically, but emotionally. The tears came in waves, and through them, he began to speak. The words tumbled out in a rush. Confessions about loans, about credit cards, about the web of lies he'd spun to maintain the illusion of success.
Sarah listened. Her face was a mixture of betrayal, anger, and something else, a flicker of the love that had once brought them together. She didn't embrace him, she didn't forgive him, but she didn't walk away either. Dr. Phil returned to his chair and addressed the audience. What you're seeing right now is what happens when the performance ends. When someone who's been living a lie finally has to face the truth. It's not pretty, it's not comfortable, but it's necessary. He turned to the camera, speaking directly to the viewers at home. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in Marcus, if you're living beyond your means, if you're hiding financial problems from your family, if you're constructing a life built on credit and lies, understand this. It will catch up to you. It always does. And the longer you wait, the harder the fall. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He signaled to cut the cameras. The red lights went off. What happened next wasn't scripted, wasn't planned, and wasn't meant to be part of the show. Dr. Phil called his production team over and had a brief, intense conversation. Then he turned to Marcus and Sarah, who were still standing together in the aisle, and said something that made everyone in the studio lean forward to hear. Marcus, Sarah, I want you both to come backstage with me right now. They followed him off the stage, through the curtain, and into a private room where Dr. Phil's team of financial counselors and therapists were waiting. For the next 2 hours, while the audience sat in stunned silence and the production schedule fell apart, Dr. Phil personally worked with the couple to create an actual plan. Not for the cameras, not for content, because it needed to be done. When they finally emerged, Marcus looked different. The bravado was gone, replaced by something raw but real. Sarah's expression was still guarded, but there was a glimmer of hope that hadn't been there before. Dr. Phil brought them back on stage for the final segment. The audience, who had been waiting patiently, erupted in applause, not for entertainment, but because they understood they'd witnessed something authentic beginning in real time. Marcus has agreed to enter financial counseling, Dr. Phil announced. He's also agreed to full transparency with Sarah regarding all debts, accounts, and financial decisions moving forward. This isn't going to be easy. Recovery from this level of deception takes time, effort, and absolute honesty. He held up the white envelope again. This envelope represented the truth that Marcus was afraid to face. But here's what I want everyone to understand. The truth doesn't destroy you. Lies destroy you. The truth might hurt. It might be uncomfortable. It might shatter the image you've built. But it's also the only thing that can set you free. Marcus nodded, his voice choked with emotion. I've wasted 12 years pretending to be someone I'm not. I don't want to waste another day. But what happened next is something no one in the room or watching at home saw coming. Dr. Phil reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Marcus. This is the contact information for a friend of mine who runs a legitimate consulting training program. It's not going to make you a millionaire overnight. It's not glamorous. But if you actually put in the work, real work, not shortcuts, you might be able to build something honest. Marcus took the card with shaking hands. Why would you help me after everything I did? Dr. Phil's response was simple. Because everyone deserves a chance to become who they're supposed to be. But you only get one. Don't waste it. The audience stood up. The applause wasn't polite or obligatory. It was thunderous. People were crying, hugging strangers next to them, because they just witnessed something television rarely captures. Genuine transformation beginning in real time. As the show wrapped, Dr. Phil addressed the camera one final time. If this story resonated with you, if you know someone who needs to hear it, if you've ever struggled with the temptation to be more than you are, rather than working to become more, share this, talk about it. Because the conversation about financial deception, about keeping up appearances, about the cost of lies is one we need to have more often. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story never gets forgotten. 3 months after the episode aired, Sarah sent Dr. Phil a letter. Marcus had completed the financial counseling program. They'd sold the Tesla, returned the watches, and moved into a smaller apartment. The debt wasn't gone, but they had a plan to tackle it. More importantly, they had honesty. The letter included a photo. Marcus and Sarah standing in their modest living room with their 2 children between them. No designer clothes, no expensive backdrop, just a real family working on building a real life. Dr. Phil kept that photo on his desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of why he does what he does. Because sometimes breaking through someone's carefully constructed lies isn't about humiliation, it's about liberation. The white envelope that started it all remained in Dr. Phil's office as well, tucked into a frame with a simple inscription. The truth doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be spoken. And in that studio, on that day, when the camera stopped rolling and Dr. Phil held up that envelope, everyone learned a lesson that no script could teach. Real change doesn't happen when you're performing. It happens when you finally stop pretending and face what's true. Marcus walked onto that stage as a fake millionaire. He walked off as something far more valuable, an honest man. And that white envelope, it didn't just expose a lie. It saved a family.